Commander Tazvir of the Vraxian Exploratory Directorate lounged in his command cradle like a patient spider. Around him, the bridge hummed, vent fans sighing, crystal processors whispering, the faint throb of a silent drive tuned to cloaked drift. All was routine. A new yellow star catalogued, a third planet tagged *pre-FTL*, and another entry ready for the Directorate's fat archive. Survey confirms a bipedal mammal with tool use and orbital probes, Science Officer Lorana reported. Her 4 eyes blinked in that diagonal ripple that meant focused excitement for their kind. Local name clusters translate to human asterisk, Terran asterisk, people asterisk. Tazvir twitched one sensory tendril. Another culture climbing its gravity well on chemical fire. He tasted faint boredom in the recycled air. Record and withdraw, the council still hisses about TD. A soft tremor rolled through the deck plating. Defensive specialist Quartz hunched over his console, the throat membrane under his jaw pumping. Commander, trajectory alert, incoming projectile on collision vector. Tazvir sat up straighter, our cloak. Unaffected, Quartz said, they shouldn't see us. Murmurs rippled across the pit. Vraxians did not do panic. They did posture and sarcasm in council hearings. Panic was for prey. It's not a weapon, Lorana said, leaned in, voice flat with surprise. It's a craft, a shuttle, chemical thrusters, there's a pilot. Polite laughter snapped like insect wings. Even Tazvir's secondary eyes crinkled. How quaint, he said. Evasive drift, don't squash their toy. The shuttle did not curve away. It corrected. Its nose ticked like a predator scenting a warm trail in cold air and held line. Lorana's dorsal crest rose a fraction. Recommend capture, Commander, a live study would. Soothe the council and polish my record, Tazvir finished. Very well, tractor soft pull, containment 3, full quarantine. Invisible force gripped the little craft. It should have yielded. It didn't. The shuttle rolled, venting vapor, jets spitting in needle bursts. Its belly panels flexed like a fish fighting a net. They're countering, Quartz said, incredulous, on instruments they can't know exist. Impossible, Tazvir snapped, even as the shuttle carved a mad spiral and stabilized inside the beam without snapping apart. Whoever flew it understood stress tolerances like a sculptor understands stone. Increase pull by 2, he ordered. Ease them in. The shuttle flashed, asterisk not catastrophic, sharp, surgical, a shell peeling away. Fragments fanned across the cloaked hull in glittering arcs. A bloom of gas, a coil of cable, a scatter of pale dust. And a small figure launched from the rupture, a white-shelled body with pulse jets strapped to its back, hands tucked to minimize drag. Lorana zoomed the feed, the bridge stilled. Alive, she breathed. It's alive. The figure's visor was a dark coin. It reoriented like it had trained for this exact gravity, this exact drag. It arrowed toward the maintenance ring along Deck 7. Seal the ring, Tazvir's voice cracked. Lock all ports, flood access with inert fog. Too late, Quartz said. Commander, it's matching our maintenance flares. It's rolling to match our umbilical couplers. How? The figure latched to the rim. Fingers moved with metronome calm across a Vraxian panel it had no business reading. Sparks licked. The hatch rolled. Breath held, time thinned. Boarding alert, Tazvir said, regaining calm by force. Security to 7, non-lethal only. The council wants specimens intact. He did not add, and so do I. Alive, thinking primitive, catalogued, mapped, explained, would polish his nameplate bright. The intruder's suit camera, stolen through their internal optics in a single silent sweep, lit their own corridor back at them when the door irised. Tazvir watched himself, in miniature reflection, as if the human's eye were a mirror. Containment 3 prepped, Lorana said. Her voice should have steadied him, it did not. Medical ready, biofilters active. The first team met the human at a T-junction. The footage was crisp. It would have been beautiful if it weren't horrifying. They formed a Vraxian wedge. The human didn't break stride. It gave a shorthand sign none of them recognized, habit, mockery, and lifted a device the size of a stone fruit. White light tapped the wedge's leading officer between the eyes. He folded with a sigh, a gentle sigh as if tucking into bed. Pulse darts rained. The human slid low into the wall, using its own reflection in the polished conduit to time returns, snapping darts, acoustic bounce to triangulate. It did not fire to kill. It did not even fire to bruise. It fired to erase options asterisk, stunners to ankles, to weapon wrists, to the delicate throat membranes that managed Vraxian breath. With the wedge gasping soundlessly, it slipped past like a shadow moving through lamplight. Second team, Tasvir rasped. Net it. They tried. The human took their net gun and fed it into a wall port mid-stride, used their own microgrid to short 3 cameras and reassign a maintenance drone to trail it. The drone floated behind like a pet balloon. "How is it reading our haptics?" Quartz asked, voice pitched thin. "It isn't," Lorana murmured. "It's feeling them. Watch, the left gloved hand micro-tremor when it brushes the panel seams. It's reading magnetic harmonics, pressure plate biases." Tasvir cut her off. Enough all heard it to 3. They did not hurt it. It herded them down a maintenance run that looked empty on schematics until the human used a side panel as a lever to uncage an old emergency ladderway no one had used in 200 cycles. The human moved like water poured into once-forgotten channels. It knew spaces the ship had forgotten it had. Tasvir ran. He rarely ran. His chest valves hammered. When he turned into the last corridor before Containment 3, the human stood at the far end, visor up now, face revealed. Pale dermis, forward eyes bright as knives, mouth a line that could be a scar or a smile. He raised one hand as if quieting a classroom. The other hand held the fruit device. "Drop it," Tasvir said, his breath fogged. "You are contained, you will not be harmed." The human's head tipped, a small avian question. Then he lifted the device, tapped it twice, once to the ceiling, once to the floor, precisely where the corridor's field generators were buried. The lights hiccuped. Their weight dropped to a soft cloud. Tasvir staggered. In that heartbeat of wrong gravity, the human glided past 3 guards and pressed the device gently, almost kindly, to Tasvir's thorax. Cold white sleep. He woke under medical lamps, the taste of copper and shame in his mouth. First Officer Marek hovered, a tight set to his tendrils. "We have it," Marek said, "contained." "How?" Tasvir croaked. "It let us," Marek answered, not meeting his eyes. Tasvir slid from the cradle and insisted on walking the last stretch himself. Containment 3 was a clean, round room with a clear plasma wall and the soft thrum of fields that could hold a small comet. Inside, on a low platform, the human sat cross-legged, helmet clipped to his hip, white suit scuffed with carbon scars. He did not glance up when they entered. He was already looking at them, steady as a nailed compass. Dr. Zella of Xenolinguistics stood at the intercom, her tendrils trembling with a scholar's hunger. "We are peaceful," she began in common, then in 3 trade cants and 1 series of pictographic gestures. "We mean no harm, we wish to learn." The human's eyes, predator eyes, old instincts insisted, did not flicker. "We've injected microtranslators into the field," Lorana murmured. "He can hear." "Then he chooses not to answer," Tasvir said. His voice was better now, authority returned like blood to a numbed limb. "Very well, protocol gray, observe record, do not provoke." He turned to go. The human's lips parted. The voice that came was soft, raw from vacuum and effort, and as unremarkable as a quiet street, 3 ordinary words, a pebble tossed into a black lake. "See you soon." Tasvir paused. He did not look back. He did not give the creature the theater of reaction. He only lifted 1 tendril in a dismissive arc and left the observation ring. Later, in his private log, he called it bravado. In the corridors, whispers had already begun to grow like fungus in damp corners. The first team said the human had mapped their footfalls before they made them. The second said it had smiled, smiled, when the net misfired. The drone technician swore the intruder had patted his floating repair unit like a pet and whispered thanks. Vraxians prided themselves on being above superstition. Yet in the galley, spoons fell quieter. In washrooms, eye stalks stayed down. In sleep pods, more than 1 crew member lay awake counting the heartbeats of the ship and wondering which ones were theirs and which were a stranger's fingers tapping through the walls. On the second shift, during a routine status check, Lorana found Tasvir standing alone at the observation window. The human sat exactly where they had left him, hands neatly folded, breathing slow as a metronome. He did not blink often. When he did, it was deliberate, a door opening and closing on purpose. "He is not what I expected," Lorana said softly. "What did you expect?" Tasvir asked. Panic, rage, begging, her crest lowered, embarrassed. "Pray." "Pray can be patient," Tasvir said. He did not move his gaze. Predators even more so. As if hearing, the human turned his head. The smallest motion, the barest drift of a gaze like a shadow crossing a dial. It landed on Tasvir and did not move away. "Run full bio-read," Tasvir said. "Vents, waste, sweat, microflora, whatever he sheds. If it lives, I want it cataloged." "Yes, Commander." "And increase the field 10%. He will not move a muscle without my permission." They did. The field brightened to a faint halo. The human closed his eyes. He looked at last like someone resting after a long day. 3 minutes later, engineering flagged a blip. A flicker in a subgrid that never flickered. A heartbeat later, it was gone. Courts dismissed it as a thermal twitch. 2 hours later, the field cameras caught something strange. Not motion, not even a change of posture. Just a faint smear of light, like heat mirage at noon, curving behind the human's head and wicking along the wall in a lazy S. It vanished before the processor could isolate it. The duty tech marked it for later review and forgot. On the 4th hour, Dr. Zella returned with a different translator profile. "No threats," she said into the grate. "No traps, no lies, only questions. My name is Zella. May I learn yours?" The human opened his eyes. He did not answer. He did not need to. In the reflection of the glass, Zella saw the bridge 3 decks away. She saw, for the briefest shimmer, a map she had not given him. She blinked. The reflection was only her again. "Commander," Lorana's voice came distantly through Tasvir's collar. "We've logged a second subgrid flutter in the containment ring. Diagnostics report clean, but—" "Send Drav," Tasvir said. "If the field hiccups again, I want redundancies on redundancies." He did not admit the strange weight in his chest valves as he turned to the door. He did not admit that "see you soon" had nested somewhere soft and would not stop turning over like a warm stone. He did not admit fear. He did not have to, because when the lights dimmed 1 bar, exactly 1 bar, and then righted themselves, Lorana said, too calm, "Commander, the field registered a pressure change without mass transfer." "Meaning?" Tasvir asked. "Meaning," she said, eyes fixed on the human through 4 panes of glass and a dozen redundant meters. "Something touched the wall from the asterisk inside and the outside at the same time." Tasvir's tongue went dry. The human smiled with only his eyes, as if to say, net enough. "Double guards," Tasvir said, voice careful not to shake. "Nothing organic within 3 meters of the field, drones only, and keep him looking at us." "Yes, Commander." They did not look away. They watched the human not move. They measured his stillness. They told themselves stillness was control. They did not notice, for they could not, that on the room's far wall, in the blind angle between 2 cameras, where shipbuilders had left a thumb's width of shadow 2 centuries ago, the first faint line was writing itself, slowly, patiently, like frost creeping from a cracked seal. It curved. It connected. It became a circle with a diagonal line through it. A hunter's mark. The Vraxian cruiser was a fortress in the void. Its bulkhead walls could withstand meteors, its fields could divert stars, whispers, its decks had never been breached in 5 millennia of exploration. To its crew, safety was as constant as the pulse of the ship's core. And yet the human was inside. The corridors of Deck 7 echoed with alarm chimes. Crimson strobes painted the sleek silver walls as security teams swarmed in formation, pulse weapons raised. Their boots struck the metal in steady rhythm, each soldier sure of their training, each certain of superiority. At the center of their focus, a figure in white armor, compact and awkward by Vraxian standards. The human suit bore black scoring from the controlled explosion, but the being moved with eerie calm, drifting just ahead of them, using bulkhead curves like a map etched into memory. "Close corridor nets," barked Security Chief Vox, his throat membrane swelling as his claws clacked against his weapon. But the human was already moving. He leapt sideways, planting magnetic boots against the wall, using the sudden torque to pivot and fire short bursts from a handheld thruster. The move carried him clear of the descending net and behind a support strut. When he reappeared, it wasn't to attack, it was to study. Those forward-facing predator eyes scanned every detail. The rhythm of the alarms, the glow of the vents, even the flickering panels that revealed overtaxed power relays. He didn't just see, he understood. The first team struck. 3 soldiers advanced in a wedge, pulse blasters crackling. The human dropped low, rolled beneath a shot, and snapped something small from his belt. A disc no bigger than a Vraxian's palm clattered against the deck. Light surged. The team fell, weapons dead in their claws, suits flickering. They convulsed as their exosuits locked rigid, hacked by a pulse the human had cobbled together from the ship's own emission frequencies. Disable, disable only, Vox screeched. But the human wasn't killing, he was learning. Commander Tasvir watched the chaos unfold on the tactical displays. His throat was tight, tendrils curling in disbelief. 3 teams neutralized in under 2 cycles, he muttered. Science officer Lorana stood beside him, her crest rising. It moves like it's trained for our corridors. Absurd, Tasvir snapped. We've observed their world less than a rotation, they can't possibly. Commander, Lorana interrupted softly, what if we're not the first they've studied? The thought knifed through the command deck. No one dared to breathe it louder. By the time Tasvir himself stormed toward Deck 7, he was no longer a commander securing a specimen. He was prey chasing a predator. His claws trembled against the command hilt at his side, but he forced himself steady. The airlock door hissed open, and the human was there. Helmet unlatched, pale face revealed, dermal tissue shockingly unarmored, yet those eyes, those terrible, unblinking eyes fixed on him. For one stretched heartbeat, neither moved. You will surrender, Tasvir said, forcing his voice into iron. You cannot win. The human tilted his head. Then he raised a small cylindrical device. A flash of white light seared Tasvir's vision. His thorax jolted with pain. Darkness swallowed him. When awareness returned, the hum of medical instruments filled his ears. Pain lingered like an echo in his chest. He blinked his primary eyes open to see First Officer Marek leaning over him, tendrils tight with unease. We have it, Commander, Marek said. Relief washed through Tasvir until Marek added, it let us. The walk to Containment Chamber 3 was longer than it had ever felt. Every step scraped against silence. Crew members avoided Tasvir's gaze as if his eyes might burn them. Inside the chamber, the human sat cross-legged on the sterile platform. The plasma barrier shimmered between them, its hum steady, its glow reassuring. The human's helmet rested at his side. His breathing was calm, his gaze was patient. It wasn't a prisoner's look. It was something worse, something calculating. Dr. Zella of Xenolinguistics stood before the intercom. Her tendrils quivered as she tried again. We are peaceful, she said. We mean no harm, we only wish to learn. Her words echoed across the barrier in a dozen dialects, accompanied by gestures known to soothe alien minds. The human blinked once slowly, then resumed his stare. Frustration rippled through the observation deck. It hacked our systems, Vox growled. It understands us, it's playing a game. No, Zella said softly. If it could, it would answer, it chooses silence. Tasvir leaned closer to the glass, all 4 eyes fixed on the human. Listen well, specimen. You are contained, you will cooperate, or you will. The human's lips moved. 3 words, quiet, hoarse, but sharp enough to pierce through translation static. 3 days. The chamber fell into silence. Tasvir's tendrils froze mid-gesture. Lorana's crest flared in alarm. Vox's claws clicked against his holster. The human didn't elaborate, didn't blink, didn't move. He simply stared through the glass, as if counting down in his head. The human said nothing more after those 3 words. 3 days. For a species as disciplined as the Vraxians, silence was usually strength. It meant control, order, patience. But the silence of this creature was different. It wasn't emptiness, it was weight. It pressed into every corridor, seeped into the crew's bones, whispered at the edges of their sleep. The watching. Inside Containment Chamber 3, the human remained perfectly still. Cross-legged on the sterile platform, hands resting lightly on his knees, his pale face unguarded and calm. No packing, no restless movements, no attempts at escape. He simply stared. Security Chief Vox stood stiff-backed at the observation window, pulse weapon clutched tight. His throat membrane fluttered as he muttered, It doesn't eat, doesn't drink, doesn't even breathe like a normal organism. This is a trick, some kind of trap. Dr. Zella disagreed. She stood at her console, voice quiet but steady. It eats, Chief, just not often. I've tracked its respiration. Too slow, yes, unnaturally controlled, but deliberate. It is regulating itself. That's not possible, Vox growled. Not for prey. Zella turned her eyes toward the human's still form. Then perhaps it is not prey. Unease among the crew. By the second day, unease had rippled through every deck. Engineers whispered of shadows that shifted when no one was watching. Medics reported half the crew suffering nightmares. The youngest researchers claimed the humans sometimes stood facing a different wall when they returned from breaks, though the recordings showed nothing. Commander Tasvir brushed it off at first. Hallucinations, stress, but even he could not ignore the spreading paranoia. Science officer Lorana approached him in private, her crest trembling. They fear it, Commander. They think it moves in ways we cannot see. Some refuse to walk corridors alone. Absurd, Tasvir hissed. Our monitoring never blinks. Neither does it, Lorana whispered. The first markings. On the morning of the third cycle, alarms chimed softly in the containment wing. Not violent alarms, not screams of breach, just quiet alerts that something had changed. When Tasvir arrived, the chamber walls were no longer pristine. They were covered, equations scrawled in long, deliberate lines, circles and symbols etched into surfaces that had been smooth only hours before, diagrams spanning floor to ceiling, schematics of the ship itself, propulsion nodes highlighted, stress fractures detailed, weaknesses mapped. Commander, Drav the chief engineer whispered, his scales drained of color. These aren't guesses, they're corrections. That thing has found flaws in systems I designed, flaws I never saw. How, Tasvir demanded. His throat pulsed with fear he tried to mask as anger. It hasn't moved. Exactly, Drav replied grimly, and yet it knows. The crew cracks. By now, discipline was crumbling. Conversations stopped when the commander entered. Guards twitched at shadows. Some whispered openly that the creature was not confined at all. Terminate it, Vox urged again, claws scraping the glass. This is no specimen, it's a weapon, a predator. But Zella shook her head. You saw the equations, they're not just sabotage, they're notes, it's studying us, documenting, waiting. Waiting for what? Tasvir snapped. The chamber lights flickered once. The human's head rose. And though his lips never moved, every crew member swore they heard a whisper in their minds, clear as the hum of the engines. Soon, the Vraxian cruiser had not seen a fatal accident in over 7 cycles. It was a vessel built on redundancy layered upon redundancy. Every system was designed to fail safe, every field woven with backups, every door with triple seals. And yet, within a single rotation of the human's warning, death had already come. The first death. It began in engineering. Assistant Engineer Pack had been performing routine maintenance on the reactor's thermal shield, a task so ordinary it was usually assigned to trainees. The shield failed. Not gradually, not with error codes. One instant it was there, the next it wasn't, deactivated as if by an unseen hand. Heat flooded the chamber. Pack's scream carried for only a moment before it cut off. By the time others reached him, he was ash and char. There are 7 fail-safes, Chief Engineer Drav shouted, his scales pale. 7, they all collapsed simultaneously. It was the human, someone whispered. No, Commander Tasvir barked. Contained specimens do not manipulate reactors from sealed chambers. But his words rang hollow even to himself. The second. Hours later, the food synthesizer on Deck 4 exploded. A burst of shrapnel pierced researcher Velt's thorax. He bled out before the medics could arrive. The machine's logs showed nothing wrong. Every test run since had been flawless. Coincidence, Tasvir said, but fewer believed him. The third. Navigation Officer Arax was found in the zero-gravity chamber. Her breathing apparatus had detached, her body floating lifeless, eyes open wide in frozen terror. Safety protocols should have detected it instantly, forced oxygen into her lungs, signaled an alert. They hadn't. That made 3 deaths in less than a day. Fear spreads. The crew no longer whispered, they shouted. Guards doubled up in corridors, scientists begged to abandon the mission. Security Chief Vox became the loudest voice. End it now, he roared, slamming his claws against the table in the command briefing. That thing warned us. It is killing us one by one. Why should we wait for the 4th? Zella countered, her tendrils trembling. We still do not understand what it is or what it wants. Termination could trigger something worse. "You think this isn't worse?" Vox spat. "The humans move." As they argued, the ship lurched violently. Gravity fluctuated. Panels tore loose from ceilings. A security officer was impaled by falling debris, death number 4. And then the human's voice filled the ship. Not from the chamber, from every speaker. Calm, measured, almost conversational. "Who's next?" The bridge froze. Crew looked to their commander, eyes wide, throats poolsing. Tasvir swallowed, fighting to keep his voice steady. "It's bluffing, psychological warfare, primitive intimidation tactics." But when he glanced toward the observation chamber, the human was no longer sitting cross-legged. He was standing, smiling, hand pressed against the glass. And for the first time in 5,000 cycles of Vraxian dominance, Commander Tasvir understood what it felt like to be prey. The ship had become a coffin of whispers. Every corridor carried tension. Every shadow felt like it might conceal the pale figure they thought they had caged. Crew members traveled in groups now, clutching pulse weapons, their eyes flicking constantly toward vents and hatchways. The human had spoken only twice, 3 days and who's next, but those words echoed louder than alarms. Commander Tasvir forced himself to maintain order. He barked commands, doubled patrols, reassigned research teams, but he could feel it slipping. Authority meant little when the crew no longer believed their leader could protect them. Even Lorana, loyal and precise, avoided his gaze now, her crest trembling faintly whenever the human's name was mentioned. The containment chamber was empty. No breach recorded, no alarms tripped. The guards swore they never left their posts. The field had never deactivated, yet the human was simply gone. One moment still inside, the next vanished like smoke. "Phase shifting," Dr. Zella whispered, her tendrils curling tight. "Or teleportation. Either way, it isn't bound by our walls." Vox clenched his weapon so tightly his claws squealed against the grip. "Then we hunt it like the predator it is." The order went out. Search teams swept the vessel section by section, weapons armed, sensors tuned to maximum, but the human was always one step ahead. Reports came in like knives. Deck 3 power relays fried, Deck 9 monitoring systems looped into static, Deck 2 crew members missing. When they checked, the missing returned, only they were corpses. What unsettled them most was the precision. These were not random failures, not chance accidents. They followed a pattern, moving sector by sector, circling inward. It was hunting. In the shuttle bay, the truth revealed itself. One of their scout craft sat gutted, panels removed, its standard engines replaced with something new, something that glowed with an energy signature none of their scanners recognized. Around it lay scattered tools, hybrid devices fusing Vraxian engineering with unfamiliar components. The human had been here, working for hours, maybe longer. Chief Engineer Drav studied the modifications, his claws trembling. "This isn't an escape vessel," he said, voice hollow. "The power curve is wrong. This is a weapon." "Against us?" Vox asked. "No," Drav whispered. "Against a planet." The bay screens all flickered at once. Every console, every display, every visor lit with a single face. The human's. His forward-facing eyes gleamed with something primal, something alive with purpose. For the first time, he smiled wide. "Ready or not," he said, voice resonant across every deck. He leaned closer to the camera, and the crew swore they felt his eyes on each of them personally. "Here I come." Darkness fell like a blade. The hum of the engines, the steady rhythm of life support, the background chorus of machinery that had always comforted the crew, all of it vanished. For a heartbeat, the Vraxian cruiser was nothing but silence, punctuated by the panicked breathing of hundreds of throats. Emergency lights flickered on, bathing every corridor in deep crimson, painting the walls as if blood had soaked through the ship's skin. "Power failure," Lorana's voice crackled over the comms, sharp with fear. "Backup systems engaging, but the main reactor is gone. It's just gone." Commander Tasvir gripped the rail of the command deck until his claws dug furrows into the metal. Power didn't just disappear. Even if the core had failed, the redundancies should have kept the ship alive, unless the human had already taken them too. The containment chamber appeared on screen. It was empty. "No breach, no field collapse," Zella whispered, her tendrils writhed, eyes wide. "It just isn't there." Panic rippled through the deck. Officers muttered prayers to old gods. Security shouted orders that contradicted each other. Tasvir silenced them with a roar. Search teams, full lockdown, no one travels alone, 3 or more armed, find it. But the human found them first. Reports streamed in from across the vessel. Deck 9, security cameras looped into endless static. Deck 5, life support controls reprogrammed to vent corridors into vacuum before failing safe. Deck 2, 2 soldiers dead, their weapons missing, their bodies arranged neatly side by side as if placed there with care. It's moving faster than we can track, Vox snarled, his claws tapping against his weapon. It's everywhere at once. It's not everywhere, Zella said. Her voice was quiet, analytical, even as fear trembled in it. It's choosing, deliberate, surgical. They had assumed chaos, but there was a pattern. The malfunctions were spiraling inward, sector by sector, like a predator circling its prey before striking the heart. Tasvir felt it then in his secondary stomach, the cold weight of inevitability. This wasn't resistance, this was control. The comms flared suddenly. The Council's image appeared, ancient faces floating in nutrient tanks, their voices sharp with accusation. Commander Tasvir, explain yourself. How has a pre-FTL specimen compromised a directorate vessel? But before Tasvir could speak, the image flickered. The feed dissolved into static, and then, in perfect clarity, the human's face replaced the Council's. He was calm, too calm. His pale skin gleamed under the shuttle bay's strange new glow. His smile was slight, but it carried the weight of a death sentence. This ship, he said, voice low but steady, filling every corridor, every ear, is mine. The crew froze, some dropped their weapons outright, others raised them at shadows, unsure what they were even aiming at. Tasvir's claws trembled around the railing. Why? He demanded into the silence. Why do this? What do you want? The human leaned closer. His eyes locked on the commander, unblinking, predatory, alive with something ancient. You hunt the weak, he said, but you made one mistake. Tasvir's throat membrane pulsed erratically. And what is that? The human's smile widened. You captured a human. The screens all flared white. The ship shuddered as systems across every deck screamed in protest. Lights dimmed to nothing, leaving only the sound of the crew's ragged breathing and the knowledge that the prey had become the predator. The shuttle bay was alive with a glow no Vraxian eye had ever seen. The scout vessel, once a tool of exploration, now pulsed with energy far beyond their own engineering. Strange hybrid cores hummed, fusing alien science with human ingenuity. Its surface shimmered as if alive, plates shifting to channel power through veins of blue-white light. The crew gathered at the edges of the bay, weapons trembling in their claws, none daring to step forward. Commander Tasvir shoved his way to the front. His chest valves thudded painfully, his tendrils stiff with dread. He wanted to believe it was salvageable, that they could retake control, disable the machine, reclaim their pride. But the human stood before it, helmet clipped to his belt, suit scorched, eyes calm and steady. He looked less like a prisoner now and more like a king surveying conquered ground. Stand down, Tasvir roared, his voice echoing off the walls. You cannot win, you are one against hundreds. The human tilted his head as though considering the words. Then he spoke, his voice steady, carrying through the entire ship's comms. One is enough. A murmur ran through the gathered crew. Vox snarled and lifted his weapon, but Tasvir slapped it down with a tendril. He could see it now, the hopelessness etched into every face around him. They weren't soldiers anymore. They were prey too frightened to strike. The shuttle's engines flared, but the readouts on nearby screens made no sense. The power curve climbed beyond theoretical limits, beyond safety, beyond sanity. Drav's voice cracked. Commander, this isn't propulsion, it's charging. He's turned it into a weapon. What target? Tasvir demanded, though a cold suspicion already coiled in his gut. The human answered without being asked. Your world, the hunter's den. Gasps rippled, Lurana's crest sagged. But why, she whispered, why destroy us? At that, the human finally looked away from Tasvir and swept his gaze across the crew. There was no malice in his eyes, only a terrible, unwavering clarity. Because you take, you conquer, you think yourselves untouchable. I am here to remind you, prey can fight back. The ship convulsed suddenly as systems shut down one after another. Gravity faltered, lights flickered, weapons powered off in every claw. Vox cursed, pulling his trigger again and again, but nothing fired. The only light left in the bay was the pulsing heart of the human's creation. Tasvir stumbled forward, forcing strength into his voice. Listen to me, you can't win like this. The Council will send more ships, more hunters. If you kill us, you damn your species. The human's gaze returned to him. No, he said softly. If I kill you, I warn them. Then he smiled, a predator's smile, sharp and unyielding. The reactor surged. Every deck across the cruiser screamed as power was siphoned into the modified craft. The hull groaned, bulkheads shuddered, alarms wailed with no answers left to give. The crew backed away in panic, their training shredded by fear. Tasvir stood frozen. He wanted to order them forward to reassert dominance to claw back control, but deep inside he knew it was finished. The Vraxians had not captured a specimen. They had unleashed one. The human stepped into the vessel, its hatch sealing behind him. For one final moment, his voice echoed through every corridor. You thought you caught prey, but you only baited a trap. The engines ignited, a blinding wave of blue-white fire that tore through the bay, through the ship, through the last illusions of safety the Vraxians had. When the light faded, the great cruiser was silent. Fragments drifted in the void, scattered and broken, a graveyard marking the folly of hunters who mistook humanity for helpless. And somewhere, racing toward the stars in his stolen weapon, the human carried more than survival. He carried every secret he had stolen, every flaw he had mapped, every piece of knowledge the Vraxians thought theirs alone. The galaxy had new prey to fear. And this time it had forward-facing eyes.